Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. Today, I'm going to be talking about all of my favorite fantasy romance series. 10 series that I have read, either every single book or every single book that has been published so far. I would recommend every single one of these series to anybody. Family members, friends, anybody I meet on the side of the road, like anybody who asks for recommendations for a fantasy series of any kind. These are series that I would recommend in a heartbeat. I'm not necessarily going to be ranking them like 1 through 10, 1 being the best, 10 the worst, but like the top 3 series, those are definitely my top 3 series ever, but the rest of them, they're all equally just as good in my opinion. And this is another thing I want to preface is this is fully my opinion, and I just have such a love for like all of these series and all of these authors. That is literally simply what this video is about, is just to share that with you guys and just recommend some amazing fantasy series that I have grown to really love, and like these characters have gotten really close to my heart, and I'm just like really excited to share them with you guys. So let's just go ahead and jump right into it. We're gonna go ahead and start with series number 10, start talking about all these amazing fantasy books. So the first series that I would love to talk about is Daughter of No Worlds. So this is the War of Lost Hearts series, and this has since actually gone out of print of these. This is the indie published version, and she's getting republished by a traditional publisher, which I think is just absolutely amazing and something that is like super well deserved, because this is one of my favorite fantasy series to date. It's a trilogy, it's fully finished, and you're following Tizana, who is a slave. There is some type of like sick dynamic between her and her slaver, and something happens to where she just has to get out of the city. She can't stay there, she has to leave. She's been trying to like buy her freedom this whole time, but something happens, she has to flee the city. There's this one scene that I always picture in my mind when I think of the series, and that's her on horseback fleeing the city, and it's just so powerful and majestic the way that Carissa Boradbent paints this. And so anyway, so she has to flee, goes and has to basically fight for a spot in another town to where she be trained in her magic. And that is where she meets her love interest, who is this like brooding mage who's literally living in a cottage in the valley of the mountains alone, doesn't want to talk to anybody, is mad, like denies training her and basically sends her away, and she essentially forces herself into his life and like demands that he trains her, and it's just the best thing ever. And this is a slow burn if I have ever seen one, and it's just done so well. And I think Carissa Boradbent is very, very good at doing slow burns. It's 3 whole books. Each book gets a little bit chunkier and chunkier, so if that's not something that you like, then unfortunately that's something that I find a lot of the time in indie published series, where the books just kind of get bigger and bigger. But for me, it didn't bother me at all. I was actually grateful for the extra time with the characters on the page, and I loved every single book. This was like a solid 4-star series for me, like just so well-rounded in the romance and the quest, and there's like war and magic and multiple love stories, and it's just absolutely beautiful. And just being able to watch our female main character break out of the slavery and become the woman that she became is just one of the most like powerful stories that I've read, and it will stick with me for a long time. And I actually feel like I'm due for a reread of this, so maybe when the new versions come out, maybe I will do like a reread or something. But yeah, this is just like one of those beautiful like grumpy sunshine stories, and Carissa Boradbent, she is just a phenomenal fantasy author in my opinion. I read Serpent and the Wings of Night by her and The Second Duet, and I loved both of those, and this is just like fully out of that wheelhouse, but just equally as good if not better in my opinion. So yeah, Daughter of No Worlds, definitely one of the first series that I think of when I go to recommend one to somebody. Now this next series that I still have a lot of love for, yet I have a couple qualms just since it got picked up by a traditional publisher, and that is Spark of the Everflame by Penn. Now this series is incredible. The intricacy, the detail, the journey, the twists and the turns and the mystery, the things that you get to go through with these characters is just so fun, and there's just so much detail and depth to this whole story. I absolutely loved it. I started reading this a couple years ago, or when it was first coming out, flew through the first 3 books and like less than like a week. And if you've seen them in person, they're very chunky books. This one's not, but the next two in the series are like thick and like 800, 900 pages, I think. And so if that says anything, like, I feel like that just says a lot about how invested I was in these books. Just the one thing that I have had kind of like an issue with, or like kind of like a small qualm, is when she got picked up by a publisher, which I think is absolutely amazing and well deserved. We were like 1 or 2 months away from like the already announced release of the finale and the final book in the series, and I had it pre-ordered. I was ready to go. I was like so excited, looking forward to it for so long. It just got pushed back and then pushed back and pushed back, and we never really got like a definite answer on when this 4th book is going to come out. And I honestly don't even think we have a date yet for the 4th book release, and it's been like 2 years, and I think that it could have probably been handled a little bit differently, maybe a little bit more outspoken about like what their plans are and their timeline. But I just remember like stalking her Instagram for like months, trying to just figure out when I was gonna get that 4th book, because so much happens in each one of these books that like you're left, my mouth was like wide open on the floor, like drooling, like waiting for that 4th book, and I still like haven't heard anything, and that kind of just like rubs me the wrong way. Even despite all of that, this series just really held my interest. I'm still like just as excited to read that 4th book. To talk about the actual series itself, you're following this female main character, Demi. Her mother recently went missing, and we have no idea like what happened to her. Diem doesn't know where she went. She just straight up disappeared, and she's left Diem and her brother and her dad just to kind of like fend for themselves. And obviously Diem is hurt by this. There is a lot of like political intrigue when it comes to the poor and the rich and the royalty and gods and mortals, and there's so much intrigue there, and that's not usually my thing, like politics, but I really loved it. I ate it up in this series. So you're following her as she kind of like sneaks around and gets herself into the castle, and she's like sneaking around and she's like trying to find these answers and stuff. So she's kind of like working with a rebel group as they're trying to basically fight for the common mortals. I don't want to give too many details, but she ends up meeting obviously a grumpy, broody prince, and they hate each other, like full on hate each other. And at this moment she has like a boyfriend, and she ends up doing all these things. A lot of things happen. The ending of this book is like the biggest cliffhanger ever, and in the next book and the next book, like huge cliffhangers in every single book. But this is like the slowest slow burn I've ever read, but like it is so worth it in the end. Flawlessly done, like so well done. And every single time I ended a chapter, I just had to keep going. Like I couldn't put it down, and that's how I finished a like 800-page book in like 2 days. And that's not normal, but I just ate it up. I would recommend this to anybody that has so many types of interests and aspects to it that I think anybody would really love it, regardless of if you're like new to fantasy or have been reading fantasy for years. I think that anybody would really love this series. The next series that I would love to talk about is Roehrich. Now, I recently discovered this series, I think at the beginning of this year, and fell head over heels so fast for all of these characters. So far, there is this book and a second book and a novella that have been published so far, and then the next book comes out I think in February. This is a fantasy romance, and it's a little bit different because you're following a female main character who is not like your typical badass assassin, is like better than the boys. Like this is a female main character who's actually like kind of soft, and you're just like a normal girl, and she's not like ripped, and she doesn't fight with swords. Like this is just a normal girl who's just like running for her life because apparently someone's out to kill her. The whole plot is basically Scylla, our female main character, is being tracked by the queen's warriors and the queen's assassins, and she doesn't know why. She has no idea why the queen is hunting her and trying to kill her, and at least we don't know why. And this girl doesn't really like know how to fight. She doesn't know how to protect herself, but she's smart and she's witty. So she ends up finding refuge and kind of like tricking or like forcing herself into this small band of Viking warriors, and she basically hides in their wagon until they discover her, and then she's like, I'll cook for you, I'll do these things for you if you let me just ride with you and protect me. They agree. Stuff happens, she gets kind of betrayed, and like you're just going on this journey on the road of bones this whole time, and this road of bones is like a very dangerous road, so there's a lot of like monsters and attacks and wars and stuff, and it's just so good. And then there's also this little like mystery and this secret underlying the whole thing, and you just can feel it, and it's like bubbling up, and it kind of like comes out in that second book. It is just such a phenomenal book. And if you're a person who loves like quests and adventures and stuff in your fantasy books and your fantasy series, this is like one of the ultimate quest books that I've probably read recently, and I really just loved it. It has a beautiful love story. It's just so well done. You think that you know what's going on, but it's completely different than like what you thought. And then the second book is even better than the first, and you just get more of that romance in the story, and he's like training her, and it's just so good. And I have been recently recommending this to everyone, and I really can't wait to jump into that third book. I'm really excited. And you have a lot of side characters that just have beautiful stories, and you meet a lot of just really good people, and the found family is so good, so good. And then in that second book, you do get a lot more point of views and stuff from other characters and other parts of the world, and so many more answers and so many more questions pop up in that second book. So it's just really good, and I think that anybody honestly would love this series so much. The next series that is like one of my all-time favorite series, and one that I kind of just like stumbled upon recently, is the Bridge Kingdom series. I love the series with my whole heart. 6-book total series that consists of 3 different duets. So you're following a different couple every 2 books. So this book and the second book are following one main couple, and then the next 2 books are following a couple, and the next 2 books are following another couple, and they're all within the same world. You get to see and know all of them in each book. I just love so much the way that Danielle Jenson does her romances, and I think she does a really good job at like making you feel so deeply and so strongly for the characters within such a short book and like a short duology. I cried at the end of this book and the second book. That's just not really something that I do very often when it comes to like fantasy books, but I just felt so strongly, and she had such touching scenes, and I don't know, you just feel for the characters so much when they're going through these things. And she's not nice to her characters. Like, she puts her characters through hell, and she puts you through hell because of that. It's just so good. For this first duet, you're following our female main character, who is a assassin who grows up in a household full of other women or daughters of the king, and he basically hid his daughters away in a hidden fortress in the desert and trains them up to be assassins to murder his enemy's king and take over the Bridge Kingdom, which is like a coveted kingdom that you get a lot of like profit and stuff from being able to utilize this bridge in the kingdom to like buy and sell goods and stuff. And so it's very coveted, it's very profitable, and so a lot of the kingdoms like surrounding the Bridge Kingdom want to capture it and take over the bridge. And it's really hard to like break into the kingdom and find the secrets to be able to capture it. It's a difficult thing, and people have tried many times and they just can't. So our female main character, Laura, she is raised in this house as an assassin to be married off to the king of the Bridge Kingdom to basically murder him and help her home country steal the bridge and like take over the bridge. And so she is brought to his kingdom. They get married, and there's like this initial physical attraction between each other, but understandably the king of the Bridge Kingdom is very skeptical. His family is skeptical. His guards and everybody that you get to meet is like super skeptical of her, and you get to see their relationship kind of unfold. Things kind of like take a turn for the worst. This book is what makes you feel for the characters, and the second book is what breaks your heart. I love this whole series so much. The second duet is following another couple within this world, and then you go on from there. But this is one of those series that like I love to recommend because you can just commit to the first 2 books, and they're not very long. It's like 300 pages and easy books to digest. They're easy books to commit to. And if you don't like it, then you don't have to continue. But if you love it, you have so much to read. And the world is just so beautiful, beautifully described. Like I always felt like I could just dive right into her books and not even have to think. You're just like already there. You don't have to think too much about what's going on to like understand the world building or anything like that. Like she's very good at just throwing you in there and you don't have to think too much about understanding it. You're just there and you're having a good time and you're with the characters, and that's what it's about. And I love that very much about her writing style. So I do love to recommend this one. This is a big surprise for me this year. I just have been putting it off for so long and I immediately jumped into it and like binged the whole series. So I absolutely love this one and I highly, highly recommend this one all the time. The next fantasy series I would love to recommend is Nevernight. Now, if you have not read a Jay Kristoff book, you are missing out. I'm telling you, you need to read a Jay Kristoff book, and this is a really great place to start. I actually read his other series, which is actually in this list, and that's Empire of the Vampire. We'll talk about that one here in a second, but I read Empire of the Vampire first and then read Nevernight. You can do it either way. They're not connected in any way, but Nevernight is probably an easier intro into Jay Kristoff's writing, and it's a finished trilogy. It is a shorter series. It's not like crazy long, but it's like just perfect enough to like give you everything that you need. And basically you're following a girl, Mia, who is a sorceress of some sort. She can control shadow magic, and she is just like this fierce, quirky, strong woman. You're following her kind of like coming of age story almost, as she's growing up in this like really difficult city, and she is hoping and just like yearning to avenge her family who had been murdered. And she gets admitted into this like school of assassins, and she admits herself to be able to be trained as a deadly assassin to avenge her family's death. And so she's like in this school of assassins, she's having to go through these trials to prove herself, and she's fighting against other, you know, sorcerers, she's fighting against other people, and she's making alliances, and it's just like really twisty and turny. There's a lot of like found family here that I really, really rooted for during the whole time and like felt really strongly about. And it's just a beautiful story. It's a really entertaining story. It's very interesting and not something like I haven't really read anything like this before, even his other books. And I just love this series. It is just so good. And I just never hear anybody talk about it, and it just really blows my mind because this is like one of my all-time favorite series ever. I read and will read anything that Jay Kristoff writes because of his writing style. It's just so witty and funny and like grossly, almost like gruesome in a way, but it's just, I don't know the best way to describe Jay Kristoff's writing. Rough around the edges and witty, and his characters like say what they mean, and they're hard characters and they're just real. And every single time I read any of his stuff, I just immediately just like sucked into his story. And yeah, he's just an incredible author, and I loved the series so much by him. The next series that I would love to talk about is none other than ACOTAR. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to throw in ACOTAR, Throne of Glass, and Crescent City all together, because truly I feel like you need to read all three of those series. I have Crescent City up here, but if you've held those books, they're literal bricks, so I just didn't want to bring it down here. But I do feel like you need to read every single series if you're going to dive into her world. And on one side, that's a little unfortunate because these are not short series. These are commitment series. Like Throne of Glass is 8 books, ACOTAR is 5 books, and they're chunky. And Crescent City is 3,000 page books. Like, it's a big commitment and it takes a long time for people to like get through them, but it is worth it in the end for most people. I don't feel like you could like really read it and just not continue, because the way that she interconnects all 3 series is like important to each series and will be important moving forward from my understanding. So that is the one downfall of entering the Sarah J Maas like world. But if you're hooked, and if you're somebody like me who absolutely loves her character work, you're gonna be so pleasantly surprised, and you're gonna be head over heels obsessed over all of her characters. ACOTAR itself, you're following a mortal girl who is the youngest of 3 sisters. Their mother is no longer with them. They live with their dad. They're poor. They don't have enough food. And the hunting and providing is left to her because their dad is like injured, I think. And so she's literally out there hunting in the woods in the middle of the winter in the very first scene of the book, and she kills a wolf. And come to find out, this wolf is actually a fae, and another fae prince comes to take payment for the death of his friend, and he ends up stealing Feyre, who's the female main character, bringing her into his kingdom across into the fae lands, which are known to be like deadly and really dangerous. And the whole story just kind of like starts from there. There's like an evil fae who presents herself, and Feyre is having to like defeat her, and just so many good things happen in this series, and especially this book now that I'm holding it up. But yeah, it's just a really, really interesting series in my opinion. I loved all the characters. Found family is like huge in these series and each of her books, and that's like one of my favorite aspects of them is the found family. This series, ACOTAR, is a trilogy that was the original trilogy, and then she added on at the end a novella and a fifth and final installment that is following her sister, Feyre's sister, as she goes through a lot of turmoil. And that book is just a beautiful story and connects with a lot of people. And then Throne of Glass, you're following Selena, who is an assassin brought up by a male assassin, and she basically is just brought up to be really hard, really strong and independent and self-reliant. Following her in this first book as she goes through these trials to fight for a position to be the king's primary assassin and like be sent off into the world to like do his bidding and kill the people that he wants her to terminate. And she's like going through this trial in this first book, and she meets a bunch of people who end up popping up later in the series, and you just find out a lot of questions that are presented to you as a reader and in the world. And through each book, a lot of these questions are answered and brought to light, and things just like unravel. You have like multiple love interests throughout each series. You have multiple couples, multiple points of views, and it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper the farther you go into the series. And this is probably one of my all-time favorite series. It's definitely a YA, but you have little bits and bobs of like very high stake adult themed things that are going on. Each thing feels serious, you know what I mean? It's not just like a little fun YA fantasy romance. It's like these things are serious, like high stakes things happen in this book, and really real things happen. You fall in love with the characters, and once you do, you can never look back. So when I recommend series, I start with either one of these and then just leave it up to somebody if they want to like commit to the Crescent City, because that's a whole thing. And if I'm being honest, like Crescent City was not my favorite. I did not really enjoy it that much. I just had an ick about how long the books were for truly no reason, and also just, I don't know, the female main character kind of annoyed me a little bit, and male main character kind of annoyed me a little bit, but the side characters were really great. So I really just truly read it to know like how they were interconnected with ACOTAR and Throne of Glass, but they weren't terrible. They're just like were not great in my personal and humble opinion. We have 3 more series that I'm going to talk about, and 2 by the same author. So these next 2 series are truly like god tier. These next 3 series are truly god tier series for me. I will be reading them over and over and over again until I die. The first one I'll talk about is fully completed. It's a 5-book series, and that is Lady of Darkness by Melissa K. Roehrich. And this book quickly took a top seat on like one of my all-time favorite series of all time. All-time favorite series of all time. You know what I mean? When I think about it, I think of found family again. I think of magic and secrets and assassins and sisterhood and fiery romance, fake kingdoms, like unique magic styles, and you just have all of that in the series. And the biggest thing for me was watching their female main character grow as a person and grow into herself and fight a lot of like mental health battles and come out on the other side like better and stronger and closer to her people, and just like lean on her people when she needs to. And I think that that was such a big trend in this book, and it just made it so special and relatable, and I just fell head over heels for all of these characters. We're following Scarlet, who is our female main character, who is brought up in an assassin's home with her 2 other sisters. And they are just assassins. They get basically bought out and, you know, asked to do these jobs and stuff. Her and her sisters are just really, really good at their job. And you have like the human realms and the fae realms, and they don't really like get along. They don't really trust each other. She basically ends up finding herself in a house being taught manners, and she's kind of like pretending to not really know how to fight. And then she meets this like mysterious guy who like can't leave her alone, and things just kind of like go on from there. And it's a 5-book series. Each book is pretty chunky, but this is one of those series that like I never wanted to end. Like I really, really wanted to just keep reading it forever. And it just like got better and better and better as it went on. And I will talk about, there is a lot of talk about it being very similar to Throne of Glass. And I will say the first 2 books of the series did very much have a lot of similarities to Throne of Glass. I won't like say exactly what, just because I think that's just up to somebody, like that's up to your perception and not necessarily mine. And I don't want to ruin anything for anybody because it was kind of ruined for me. After the first 2 books, you have those similarities that kind of like pop up here and there. It's not the whole book, but definitely a few of them pop up here and there. And then once you hit that 3rd book and you continue on, it's like a fully unique series. Like there's no similarities at all. It does its own thing, it follows its own plot line, and it's just very much true to Lady of Darkness. And I just wanted to say that because I know that that's like something that always gets brought up. This is like one of my god tier series, and I am ready to reread it very soon, and I think I will, because we are getting the last book in the next series that I'm going to talk about, which is Melissa K. Roehrich other fantasy romance series, which is the Legacy series. And this and Lady of Darkness is interconnected in some ways, and you don't really get that until like the 3rd book in here. This is called Reign of Shadows and Endings, and this is also following a badass female main character who just does not fit in. This is in a world where there are fae and legacies, and the fae basically serve the legacies and serve them the very literal sense, but also in like supporting their power with the fae's power. So they have to get like bonded to share their power and support the legacy's power as kind of like a beacon almost. And it's not really usually a healthy relationship at all, and it is something that kind of like is feared by the fae. The fae are very much like micromanaged. They all get like categorized and tested throughout their lives and brought up the same way for the sole purpose of serving the legacy. And so that's what their whole life is to serve them. And basically our female main character, Tessalin, gets chosen by one of like the main legacy houses, and the legacy house that's not really known to be good. And so she gets chosen. She does not want to go. She fights against them, gets forced to do all these things that like she doesn't want to do, and she just doesn't fit in there at all. She doesn't fall into line, and it's like a big deal. And like that's the whole overarching plot, is her just being too much and too much to handle and just not falling in line, and no one's gonna want you because you're like this. And she's just like battling with that the whole time. And there's like an underlying romance, there's a dragon shifter, there's magic, and she's like finding herself out and finding out her own magic and stuff like that. And it's just a lot, and it's very chaotic, and that to me is what makes it so fun and entertaining, is just the straight chaos. And at every single turn you get like a new perspective and a new question and a new mystery, and it just like it's crazy. And that is just why I love it so much, is because it's just so entertaining. And so there are 3 books out right now. The 4th and final book is coming out soon, and I am very excited to read it. This is one of those series that's just gonna suck you in whether you like it or not, and I think that a lot of people would really, really enjoy it and should be exploring more of Melissa K. Roerich's writing, because both of her series are on this list. Now, the last and final book series that I have to share with you guys is Empire of the Vampire. This is another Jay Kristoff series, and this is the first book that I ever read by him. And This was like such an on the whim purchase for me at Barnes & Noble. Me and my friend were there. We were just shopping and having a grand old time. And every time we were there, we would pick this book up and we would look at it and we would talk about it and hum and haw and always end up putting it back. But like the description and stuff on the front just sounded so good and like something that we would love to read. And eventually we finally picked it up and we read it together like that week. And like a floodgate of just opportunity just opened up for me because Jay Kristoff's writing, it's just something I've never read before. Like it is just so unique and just like reels you in. And this story in particular is one of those stories that like at the end of every chapter, you just have to keep going because you know that something's going to happen in the next chapter and it never ends. And it just like was such an interesting, unique story. So this is about Gabriel Dulian, who is a Silver Saint. The Silver Saints are a like holy brotherhood almost that are created almost like Witcher vibes almost, where they're like created to hunt and kill the vampires in this world are like bad. They're like the zombies. Like you don't want the vampires. They're like the evil in this world, and the Silver Saints are the good. They have this like really amazing power. There's a lot of like religious aspects to it, like holy aspects to it that is really intriguing and interesting and not something that I've ever read in a fantasy series before. The way the story is being told is what makes it so interesting. You're observing Gabriel in captivity by the vampires tell his story to a vampire who's like writing down his story and like copying his story down. And so you're going back and forth between present and past timelines, and it just makes it really interesting and like draws you into the story, and you meet many new characters. There's a lot of love interest in this story, and the way that he does it is just very tasteful and very romantic, and you just unravel the story as you go along, and it just gets like deeper and deeper and deeper into it. And just like, I have nothing bad to say about this book. I would recommend this to everyone, but I don't think that it will be for everyone. I don't think everybody would feel the way I feel about it just because of his unique style of writing and storytelling. But I think that if he catches you and if he draws you in, then this is gonna be one of those stories that like you're never gonna stop thinking about and you're never gonna shut up about, and it's just your holy grail. It's kind of like what it is for me. So I love recommending this to people, especially high fantasy readers, because I think you would eat this up. And if you have not tried his writing style, I highly recommend it. So that's it. Thank you guys so much for watching this video and for being here and listening to me ramble about all the fantasy series that I love so much. And I know the lighting has gotten a little funky, but I have had such a wonderful time talking about all of these books, and I'm so glad that you're here. Thank you for being here, and I will see you guys in the next video next Saturday, and I hope that you have a wonderful week and a wonderful weekend. Bye guys.